Is this thing live? Are we working? I think it's live. What's going on, everybody? Hope everybody's having a fantastic, whatever day you're watching this. The beverage up over here. All right, doing a bit of a short show this evening. Still in the process of playing around with suspension settings for the 636 and for the GSXR 1000. So that is at least what I am up to. Put out a couple of videos of late. Couple on the 636, one on the Suzuki GSX S 1000 GX, which is a sport touring bike that I've got to tell you, I am overwhelmingly surprised how well that bike ran. I mean, dang, guys, that bike was amazing. And I got to tell you, it's been a while since I've had that kind of fun on any kind of bike, much less something that's, that big of a bike, I guess you could say, but it's really not that big because it only weighs 511 pounds? Yeah, that bike was fun, very quick, a lot quicker than I thought it was going to be too. And, the funny thing about bikes like that is, it's a bit of a wolf in sheep's clothing. And I found that it was a lot more fun and had a lot more sport to it than I had ever experienced in any other one of these, sport utility type bikes. And the deal that's on that bike right now is extra good. And man, I got to tell you, if you are in the Houston area and you're into that bike, run over to Stubbs, grab the keys of that thing. I had way more fun with that bike than I had any kind of any right to. In fact, let me go ahead and post up what it is that I was talking about here. So this is the bike. This isn't the exact bike that I rode. Let's get the 24 up. There it is. So the green bike is the 24. And yeah, does that tell you anything about what I was going on about in that video? I mean, guys, seriously, this is one of the more fun motorcycles that I've ridden because number one, I didn't expect it to run like that. Number two, I didn't expect it to be as lively as it was. I'm just left completely flabbergasted by how good this bike was. Skids is in. What's going on? Oh, got the ball guy with the flex and the specs. I like it. So yeah, the GX threw me for a loop. One of the funnier aspects of this bike, and if you watch the video, that ride and review video, and I'm going to be doing a post-ride review on that bike probably tomorrow. The funny thing about that bike is that it is so wheelie happy, and the riding position, you're a bit more upright on this bike. And so, yeah, you roll into the throttle and you're trying to get the thing just to move out of its own way. And it's cool with that, but it also does not mind at all dragging that front tire up in the air. So I, again, had a blast with that bike. I hadn't ever ridden a sport touring bike that was as lively as that. And I got to tell you, I get it. And if you could only have one bike and you were doing a ton of day trips, like 2, 3, 4 hours at a time, that would be the bike that you would want because you could do your trip, pull your bags, throw them in the hotel room, and then go knock out what this guy is doing. Yeah, I would say that would be an easy purchase for me. And it did it in a way that was just so playful. That was the other thing about this bike is that it was just, I don't know. It's kind of cool. When you ride a bunch of bikes and you do a bunch of ride and reviews, sometimes there's bikes that you really gravitate towards that end up being a little bit of not really a letdown, but it ends up being a bike that's not exciting. The Triumph Tiger 800 comes to mind with that one. There's motorcycles that way in just by worlds exceed your expectations. And There's been a few, the Royal Enfield did that for me. That little Continental GT was a lot better of a bike than I thought it was going to be. And I've got to say, the Suzuki GX for me is another one of those bikes where you just kind of shake your head, man. You go, dang, I cannot believe it was that good. So we're about 5 minutes into the live show. How does the feed look tonight, guys? Is it decent? Is it bad? Is it good? Just making sure we've got a good feed coming through here, guys. Ryan saying sport touring bikes get a bad rap at times. That one looks more like a hooligan dad bike. It is a hooligan dad bike. I'll put it to you like this. When I was getting this bike onto the highway and it started doing a really pretty little power wheelie, the nannies did kind of catch in and drug me back down, which was fine. There was a part of me that really wanted to go just think, okay, then I get back on the bike, turn off all rider aids, and just go do stuff on that bike. Because I'm telling you, this bike right here, let me just say this, the balance point is really nice. It's really easy to get to just on a power wheelie, and you can just fan the brake and it's like this bike a lot, guys. Brent saying you can get a great deal on the 24 GX. Yes, you can. Yeah, you can get a hell of a deal on the one that I rode today, guys. Like thousands off of MSRP. This bike stickers at 18 and change, I believe. And I know for a fact that you could get it down, like what did I say in the video? 14.5? At 14.5, this is a monster of a motorcycle at 14.5, guys. I'm just saying. Way more punchy, way more powerful, and it sounds good too. I got to be honest, I wouldn't do anything to it. I would just leave it alone and ride it just the way it is. Ryan saying the feed looks good. Awesome. So we'll keep trucking. Yeah, and in fact, I'll even take it a step further with the GX. I was so impressed by this bike, and for reasons, it even felt better than the GSX S1000, and that's easily one of my favorite bikes that I've ridden. So yeah, all good in every aspect. Okay, so getting to the stuff that I'm up to and why I'm kind of running late and I've got to duck out a little early. I'm in the middle of finalizing, I hope, the suspension settings on the 636. And I say I hope because I'm out of adjustment. Front compression is maxed out. Front preload is maxed out. And the rear, I don't want to go any more aggressive than I already am. So what does it look like so far in terms of sag and specs and all that? Right now, with my weight being, say, 205 pounds, the front sag is at 34. The rear sag I set to 34 in a rider's position. Like you're leaned over and you're riding the bike, and that's in gear. Now that setting isn't necessarily bad, but it would be better if that setting had a spring rate to go along with it. The problem is that if I really push the pace with this bike, if I get into some real hard braking areas, I'm using up pretty much all of the front forks. And what happens is when you get the bike on the side of the tire and you're really starting to load up the suspension, what'll happen is you'll get a little bit of a wiggle out of it. And that's usually because you are way over compressing the front fork. Now, it's not uncommon to use up quite a bit of fork under hard braking. That's kind of what the forks are there for. But you want to be, say, a centimeter above, if possible, a centimeter above bottoming the thing out. I mean, you want to at least have some room in there. And I'm at about 3/8 of an inch. I'm about 10 millimeters above the bottom. Now, it's not bottoming out, but I'm also not really hammering the pace. Although I will say this, I did put that bike through some very hard braking today, and I still didn't bottom the fork out, but dang it, it came close. So I came back, loaded everything back up, and we're going to try it again tomorrow. but the bike's doing pretty well. Like I say, I made the changes that I needed to make, but I've got to remember, here's the thing: the 636 for aggressive playtime, street time type of riding is really good in that respect. And I've got to say that the more I look at the 636, the more it really kind of dawns on me that really is going to be a really good bike for the street. But if I ever wanted to build a track bike would be a GSXR 750 for me. But I don't want a new one. So what I also wanted to talk about on the live show is where the 636 kind of resides with me right now, and where a GSXR 750 could come back potentially in play. So I'll put the APB out that I'm looking for one, but I don't want a newer one. I want one with a little bit of history. I want one that's got a little bit, it doesn't have to be in the greatest of all shape. GSXR 750 probably has some work done to it. Not really caring about mileage or anything like that. I would prefer to have an 11 and up, but the bike that I would really like to find is an 07 GSXR 750. Something from that vintage, 06, 07, that would be one of the ones that I would be looking for. But I do know that those have rectifier issues and, problems, but that would be the bike that I would want, because that's that's my nostalgia. But because the aftermarket is so strong for the 11 and up bikes, I would probably just default to that, do an 11 and up bike. And, to be honest with you, that would be my 750. And I always liked ratty 750s. That would be the bike to get for me. And so that's what I'm on the lookout for. No one hanging out there, let your boy know. So that's the update on the search for the 750. But the 636, I'm moving through some of the issues with that bike right now in terms of suspension woes, if you will. I like the bike more than I thought that I would, but I'm more frustrated with it than I thought that I was going to be at this stage. Now, that has more to do with the suspension than anything else. And again, at a street pace, it doesn't really matter all that much. But the pace that I run is pretty elevated. And so the bike's got to be able to manage the kind of riding that I do with it. And as long as I keep that in check, I'll be just fine. I'm not really sweating that. And I also want to address a couple of other things. I will be doing a video on the recall on those bikes. So stay tuned for that. I'm going to be talking about what the fix is for a dealer not sold unit, a sold unit with no problems through inspection, and then a sold unit with problems and what Kawasaki is doing. So we'll be talking about those in that upcoming video. I'm also going to keep bringing you guys some updates on that bike, as well as the GSXR 1000. We're waiting on the pipes to show up, and we're still looking at like 3 to 4 weeks. 4 weeks is what it's really more looking like for that exhaust to show up. I still need to order up the exhaust, the velocity stacks for the filter for the 636 as well. So once the exhaust is put on that bike, it's also going to get a lightweight battery, as is the GSXR 1000. So what we're going to do is we're basically just going to get as much weight off of that bike as possible, let the suspension work a little bit better. And I think that's going to even the playing field for the 636. And so to talk about the 636, I cannot talk about the 636 without talking about the 750. And what's funny is that since I have basically said, look, I went away from the 750, got a 636. What's funny is how many guys are chiming in. And I love that there's all this passion and interaction. I really do like that. But one of the things is that, the 750 makes more power. It's like, yeah, Look, guys. Okay. So these are middleweight sport bikes. And the GSXR 750, as good as it is, it's not optimized. It could use some higher compression pistons to keep pace with what the rest of the bikes look like these days. And among other things, but here's the twist. The 636, when it's all tarted up, is right on the heels of a GSXR 750. But when you put in practice a contest of speed in the real world, the two bikes are practically inseparable. I've seen this over and over and over again. And so it's funny when the power thing comes up, I'm going, guys, look, for what you're going to be doing with one of these bikes, any of these bikes, they're close enough to call. They're middleweight sport bikes. None of them are crazy powerful. And by the way, you're telling somebody that is a leader bike guy about which middleweight makes more horsepower. What? No, I didn't get the bike for the power. I got it because I wanted a middleweight. I love middleweights. And I wanted a true middleweight, a true 600. That's the other thing. Nobody else makes a 750. And that is one of the weirdest things for me. I love 750. GSXR 750, all-time, one of my all-time favorite bikes. But the FCR 750, the ZX7, these are legendary bikes from back in the day. Where are they at now? You know, I wouldn't be surprised though. Walk with me on this, because look, the 636 is it is the last of the 600 class super sport bikes that are Euro 5 compliant, globally available. It's the last of that group. And what should Suzuki do? And I guess this is going to be the topic for a standalone video. And for the live show, live shows allow me to kind of work through topics. So just kind of roll with me on this. But what should Suzuki do? You've got the GSXR 600. That bike has got to get updated. There's too many. The thing is with the GSXR 600 and 750, but we'll get to that. The GSXR 600 is the one bike out of the two in the family of middleweights that has got to get updated. The reason for that is if they don't, it won't be Euro 5 compliant. But more to the point, the guys that are buying that bike are younger guys. They want the TFT screen. They want the up-down quick shifter at bare minimum. Some guys like the connectivity. Some guys like cruise control. Whether it has that stuff, to me, I get the cruise control thing. I guess that could be kind of nice now that I'm thinking about it. But the point of it is this: that bike is and always has gravitated younger guys to it. And it needs to reflect that. It needs a visual update. Along with that, the 750 would have to get the same stuff. But to me, the 750 needs a little bit more of an update than just gadgets. The reason for that is to make it Euro 5 compliant, that bike is going to get neutered. And I hate to tell you guys this. I've been saying this for just a hot minute. GSXR 750 kind of already is neutered. Okay. It's got a low compression ratio. The design of that engine is, well, what, 2005, 20 years old. They need to revamp it. And it needs to be Euro 5 compliant, because the GSXR 750 was and still is, for a lot of people, the darling of street bike perfection. Great amount of power, but not overwhelming. Great suspension, handles amazingly well. What needs to happen is that the 750 needs the Euro 5 treatment. But can I just hold up? Okay. Can we make it an 800? Just bear with me on this. It goes 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 600, 800,000. It would fall right in the middle. A Euro 5 GSXR 750 at maybe 800 cc's, you could make it just like the GSXR 1000. Variable intake cam, little bit bigger exhaust valve, little bit bigger throttle bodies. See where I'm going with this? Give it a different exhaust, do whatever you have to do. But that bike could end up being a legitimate 145 horsepower bike, which would make sense. 600 makes a little over 100. Middle kid, 750 makes a little over 140, and your 1000 makes a little over 180 or 190, say 105, 145, 195. You get the idea, right? That to me would be a smart play by Suzuki. GSXR 1000 up the 750 and letter E. And to me, that would just make sense. And when you look at the kind of power that that bike could produce with those types of modifications to meet Euro 5, what you would have is you would have a 4-cylinder with incredibly strong mid-range, just like the 636. Maybe it doesn't make outright power the way that you might like from the factory, but that's what the aftermarket's for, right? Pipes, tune, velocity stacks, whatever works. By the way, velocity stacks with stock compression ratio doesn't seem to do that well on a 750. But I guess the idea behind all this is when you start to boil it down, if the 750 doesn't get some kind of a revamp soon, I'm worried about it, because how viable can that motorcycle be in a world market where you've got a limited distribution of that motorcycle in terms of countries that can sell it or that will sell it? And those countries, the demand for that bike may start dwindling if bikes like the 636 keep taking over. And oh yeah, by the way, let's not neglect CF Moto in this conversation. Look, their 675 is extremely popular. The new 750, well, that bike promises to be even more popular still than their 675. Yeah, I get it. They're Chinese companies, but here's the deal. They're selling motorcycles in power outputs and in looks and with technology that people like. Just this past weekend, I was out with the Blue Bike with a couple of buddies. And strangely enough, one of the few bikes that we saw out and about was a CF Moto. There's a reason why that company keeps being brought up in conversation. They are making a bike that people want to buy, that people can buy. And that's a bit more to the point. That whole buying thing, yeah, it costs money to buy those things. And one of the key takeaways, we're talking about Suzuki, my beloved Suzuki, is that the pricing is just a little bit too high for the type of bike that you're getting, or at least the technology suite. The 636 barely cost a tick over $11,000. And it comes with some gadgets and doodads that folks think is important. Suspension is where they skimped. But it's good enough for street duty. If Suzuki would just put an up-down quick shifter and leave the gauges alone, just give us an actual from the factory option for the quick shifter, and hell, maybe even ABS for the guys that want that, then now you're looking at a bike that you could charge $13,000 for, $13,500, and you'll have a bike that is now got some kind of a universal appeal. Because right now, it doesn't. Oh, and one other thing. A lot of guys will say, the 750 is this great throwback bike. And you're right. You're 100% right. But the problem that I have with that statement is that I already have a legit throwback bike in the stable. It's my dad's bike, the 98 Triumph Daytona. It's got a 955cc triple, makes about, as much as it doesn't matter, say 115 horsepower to the rear tire, right there in line with all the rest of the middleweights, makes a ton of torque, only revs to 10,500 RPM. Starting to sound a lot like an R9, isn't it? But that's what I've got. I have an old school throwback bike. I don't need another one. That's why the 675 was so attractive to me as well. And I keep forgetting to bring that point up, and I keep forgetting to make that point. And it's a very, well, it's a pretty substantial point at that. You know, I don't want to make it sound as though, you know, I'm above the 750. It's not that. It's still, again, and will remain to be one of my all-time favorite bikes. And I may come back to it sooner than you think. But the reality is by the time we get to that point, I think that, you know, I want to at least give the 636 a chance. Hang on to it long enough, do some modifications to it, bring you guys that content, have some fun with it. And in the meantime, I'm still looking for another 750, guys, for sure. So keep that in the back of your mind. Carl is in saying, howdy, gang. Howdy, Carl. Germs in saying,